peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
A very good afternoon to you, and thank you for finding time to be with us this afternoon. My name is Miriam Gotu. The show is Diplomatic Clicks, and we're coming to you all the way from Kenya's capital here in Nairobi. As we all know, Kenya right now holds very important positions as far as world diplomacy is concerned in the African Union as well as the United Nations Security Council, because in January it assumed its UN Security Council non-permanent membership after it garnered around 129 votes against Djibouti, 62 votes in the second round of voting there last year. And just recently, Kenya also joined the Peace and Building Council in the AU. Kenya has that role right now, very important, especially in the continent. If you are aware of what has been happening in terms of peace and stability and security in this continent, we talk about it all the time on the show, and we just want to see the role of Kenya in these two very important organs. How will it contribute towards solving some of the conflicts we see across the continent? My panel will be joining me a bit in a short while, but before they get here, I'd like to read a bit of an opinion piece, I think, that was written by Rachel Omamo, one of the CSs here in the country. She's the Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the Sunday Nation, February 28th. And this is what Rachel Omamo had to say, just a bit of it. I'll not read the whole of it, and then we'll just get into our conversation today. On Monday, March 1st, 2021, that was on Monday, right? Kenya will assume the rotational chairmanship of the African Union Peace and Security Council for the month of March, till the month of March, for the month of March 2021. It is important to point out that Peace and Security Council is the standing decision-making organ of the African Union for the prevention, management, and resolution of conflicts in the continent. It serves as a collective security and early warning arrangement that is intended to facilitate timely, efficient, and prompt responses to conflict and crisis situations in Africa. Likewise, the Peace and Security Council serves as a vital pillar of the African peace and security architecture, which is the framework for promoting peace, security, and stability in the African continent. The PSC is therefore a critical infrastructure for the maintenance and furtherance of international peace and security. In this respect, the significance of Kenya's chairmanship of the AU's Peace and Security Council, while concurrently being a member of the United Nations Security Council, is of considerable importance to regional peace and security architecture. Indeed, Kenya's leadership of the PSC dovetails appropriately with the country's philosophy and belief in a rule-based foreign policy orientation that is also showed up by robust multilateralism. All right. It is also consistent with Kenya's advocacy of rules-based multilateral system that is deployed in a manner that attracts consensus, and one that ultimately allows countries and other stakeholders to own, accept, and implement decisions arrived thereof. So that is just a bit of what the CS for Foreign Affairs said there, Rachel Omamo. But also after Kenya was about to assume that position in the African Union of Peace and Security there in the Peace and Security Council, that is when President Joe Biden made a phone call to President Uhuru Kenyatta to congratulate him on the same. So let me just get a bit of that so that we understand perhaps why it was so important and why Kenya's presence in this very important August in the African Union and the United Nations Security Council is of fundamental, is of utmost importance in the continent. Very well. As we wait for my panel to join me this afternoon. So United States President Joe Biden wants Kenya to use its position as chair of the African Union Peace and Security Council to help end conflicts in Ethiopia and Sudan. In the first formal telephone call to President Uhuru Kenyatta since he took charge, Mr. Biden pledged a lasting partnership and a focus on regional peace and stability, taking advantage of Kenya's membership of the United Nations Security Council. A call readout shared by White House said the two leaders vowed to strengthen their bilateral relations, especially in matters affecting the Horn of Africa. President Biden, who spoke to President Uhuru Kenyatta in December also and promised cooperation on security, refugees, climate change and other challenges, made the call as Kenya prepares to chair the AU Security Council in March. So very important there, the role that Kenya will be playing both in the AU and the United Nations Security Council. And it's very interesting that both roles involve security. All right, so that will form the basis of our conversation this afternoon. Right now, I'm joined by Musa Haji, all the way from Isiolo County. Musa, very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Miriam. How are you?
Very well, thank you, and nice to have you on the show this afternoon. So we're looking at Kenya's role in both the Peace and Security Council in the African Union. We know Kenya assumed that position on the 1st of March, that is on Monday. And also Kenya assumed its position in the United Nations Security Council, not permanent member there, in January. So how do you think this will be significant in terms of finding lasting peace in this region?
Thank you, Miriam. I think as far as...
Okay, a bit of a technical hitch there.
Am I audible, Miriam?
Yes, you're audible. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. As regards Kenya's role in United Nations Security Council and being the permanent member of the council is concerned, I think we might be given some, it carries some sense of, responsibility and legitimacy, especially in ensuring that, states in Africa have what it takes to have their decisions also brought on board. But also, the key decision makers as far as the United Nations Security Council is concerned, Miriam, are the veto powers, that is Britain, Germany, Russia, China, and United States of America. But I know Africa is now grappling with a lot of, civil wars. It is grappling with a lot of, neo-colonial influence wars, especially on what's happening in Cameroon. But I know Kenya is a strategic nation in as far as, ensuring stability and security, concern in Somalia, South Sudan. And even when President Biden called Uhuru Kenyatta and talked to him about the Tigray crisis, which is in northern Ethiopia, is concerned, then I feel we are as a country, we are positioned in a way that we can make a better decision. We can make, a good representation of the embodiment of what is happening on the African continent. Also, I know there will be a lot of challenges, Miriam, in as far as the issue of democracy and regime transition is concerned. We are battling a lot of that in the African continent as far as Uganda, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and even to some extent, Sudan, which is now trying to stabilize, is concerned. Miriam, I believe Africa can have maybe, they started recently issues of, including Global South into this agenda of, being the non-permanent member. So I believe Kenya might not make, a very profounding and, life-changing and, dynamic decision in this. But I believe at least we are going to make a progress in this, Miriam.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Musa. And the Peace and Security Council protocol relating to the establishment of the Peace and Security Council was adopted on the 9th of July 2002 in Durban, South Africa, and entered into force in December 2003. The PSC became fully operational in early 2004. Now, as a chair of the council, Kenya will be expected to lead the agenda for the continental body last week, Kenya proposed that the continental body strengthens a common stand by all its 3 members in the United Nations Security Council. And so we see there Kenya already taking the lead because, as we know, Africa, we have 3 countries, representatives in the United Nations Security Council, non-permanent seat there. A draft agenda proposed by Nairobi says the continent must address underlying crises, especially in the Horn of Africa, climate change, sustainable peacekeeping, and operations and strengthening transitions in countries like Sudan. And quite interesting when President Joe Biden called President Uhuru Kenyatta to congratulate him and Kenya for leading this very important Peace and Security Council at the AU, and tasking him, particularly he mentioned Ethiopia and Sudan, and vouching his confidence in the fact that Kenya can actually do that, can bring peace and stability. Owing to the current history or what has been happening between Kenya and Ethiopia, how do you think Kenya will lead these talks, or will reach out to Ethiopia in its position as the chair of the Peace and Security Council in the African Union? How do you think Kenya will handle the Ethiopian issue, owing to what the current history we're having?
Thank you, Miriam. As far as Ethiopian issue is concerned, it's a bit complex and more emanating from internal issues than external interference. It's a bit complex in that sense, because what we are seeing here is the majority of the population, that is the Oromo community, Miriam, coming into power the other day, that is in the year 2019, after the Oromo protest, and now they want to exert their legitimacy. The government is new. The prime minister is trying to avert a lot of internal wrangles, because Ethiopia is not what we call a democratic or an open society. It's more of a let me say ethnocracy. It's an ethnocracy whereby its states and the internal boundary systems are divided according to ethnic groups. And what is happening to Tigray region, that is predominantly lived by the Tigray community, and under Article 39 of the secession rule in the Ethiopian constitution, Miriam, Eritrea took secession in 1993, and now Tigray has found itself between the new state of Eritrea and here now they are in the year 2021. What I will believe is that Kenya, the role it can play the role of being the listener and being the arbitrator. But in this aspect, taking sides will be a bit complex for them, because Miriam, there have been some humanitarian crises. The Tigray community have now fled across the border into Sudan, which is now they recently appealed for issues of humanitarian assistance across the border. So I believe in this perspective, the best Kenya can offer is talks, Miriam. They should bring Abiy Ahmed and the Eritrean president, that is Fewoki, on the board, so that they can talk about, transborder issues here. And as far as human rights violation is concerned, that is something which is beyond our analysis now. I think today, Miriam, United Nations probed an investigation into possible war crime in the northern part of the Ethiopia. We shall see how that will unfold. But as long as, Kenyan role in this is concerned, is that Kenya might trigger also regional indulgence in this, as far as Intergovernmental Authority on Development is concerned. That is IGAD. Under the leadership of IGAD, Kenya can also wage for what we call, regional intervention in terms of offering humanitarian assistance. And also what I believe, Kenya is standing at a very critical and strategic position, Miriam, in advising United Nations, permanent members, and even departmental areas on what's happening on the ground, on how issues can be resolved, on how, better interventions on resolving humanitarian crisis, refugee crisis, and possible human rights violation can be looked at. So I see Kenya not more of a taking sides in this, but more of an arbitrator and a diplomatic, leeway in seeing the reality in this. Because, Miriam, also You remember the Tigray region, who have been one of the minority communities in Ethiopia. They have produced a quite number of presidents. You know, the last president, Mele Zenawi and Haile Mariam Desalegn, they come from that community. And there have been a lot of systematic segregation and discrimination by a good number of Tigray leaders, whom now, even when Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed decided that elections shall be called off, the Tigray regional leader said our elections shall be going on, of which it was against the constitutional and, the aspiration of the Prime Minister, who triggered a war against, his people. And in a way, it can be justified in the internal, preliminaries of the Ethiopian constitution. The issue of humanitarian violation is up to the judgment and, conclusion and investigation by the United Nations. But I believe Kenya can play a key role in de-escalation of the issue and also settling of, humanitarian and refugee crisis in the region, Miriam.
All right. Thank you so much. And we know in that call that the U.S. President Joe Biden made to President Uhuru Kenyatta, that happened, I think, last Thursday. The U.S. sought Kenya's role in ongoing crises there in Tigray, as you've mentioned, in Ethiopia. And also where fighting has continued and has led to mass displacement and deaths. Now, President Biden and Kenyatta discussed the deteriorating humanitarian and human rights crisis in Ethiopia's Tigray region and the need to prevent further loss of life and ensure humanitarian access. The leaders also discussed the need to cooperation on other matters of regional stability. And we know Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has been quite adamant about refusing access. Even the other day, I think I was reading, they arrested a BBC journalist and I think two of some local Ethiopian media people who are helping him with translation, and he was trying to reach to the Tigray area. I think he was arrested over there, and they've not been wanting access, anybody to access that area in terms of media and also even humanitarian help there for the people who a lot of them have suffered, and a good number of them have moved into Sudan, which is also facing its own issues over there. So Sudan right now is quite overwhelmed with the humanitarian crisis from the refugees coming from the Tigray region there in Ethiopia. But do you think, because we know, as we have seen the way politics has been playing out in this region between Kenya, Somalia and Ethiopia, we see, what happened, Kenyan plane being shot in Somalia by Ethiopian soldiers. I think that happened about twice or something like that. And we've seen that level of aggression from their side. Do you think they'll be willing for Kenya even to come in and try to mediate and try to find a solution and help them in that manner? Do you think Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed will be receptive?
Yes, Miriam?
I'm asking, do you think Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, owing to what you've been going through and the current diplomatic situation we have, do you think he'll be receptive to want to get any help from Kenya, or any mediation or any initiative led by Kenya in this region to try to find a solution in what is happening there in Ethiopia?
Thank you, Miriam. I think for Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, I know he took the sovereign responsibility of responding to the situation. It was something which was against the sovereign entitlement of the Ethiopian constitution as far as this issue is concerned. But the point here is, Miriam, now going the way forward, how you're asking if indeed Abiy Ahmed is going to listen to the international community. I think the issue is very clear, Miriam. Abiy Ahmed was listened to. Everyone listened to him when the issue of him resolving peace and reconciliation with Eritrea was broadcasted globally, in all avenues of diplomacy, and even it reached a time we know he was given the Nobel Peace Prize for peace in the region. And I know if indeed international community they want to make an impact in this, they can. But every country, I know United States of America is going through a lot of governance transition here and there. The post-Trump issue with Biden. Britain is battling the issues of Brexit. As long as you understand that, Miriam, what I believe here is international community should be giving, an observation, and they should lend their advice to Ethiopia, Miriam. In this sense, I'm speaking of United States of America. Ethiopia is the second receiver of foreign aid from United States of America, Miriam. In terms of agricultural empowerment, security issue in the region, America, USA has been a very great ally and a strategic, position to the region, especially Ethiopia. So I believe what Abiy can do in this sense, he has achieved the autonomy of what he wanted to achieve. That is ensuring that all the states in Ethiopia is abiding by the Ethiopian constitution. There were issues of electoral crisis in Ethiopia whereby, elections were cancelled, and I'm not cancelled, were postponed in this sense. And the Tigray region people, they said, we can go on with our election. There's been a bit of politics in that sense. Remember, the Tigray community were the ones who have been in power for too long. They have been accused of using systematic, segregation in this sense. But now there is another problem in Ethiopia, Miriam, and this is constitutional reform. As far as constitutional reform is concerned, Ethiopia is a bit battling, the old constitutional outlook, Miriam. In this sense, I'm speaking about a country, a state which, all of them are so unique based on their ethnic background. And they are trying to, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is trying to purge, to bring a unified constitutional outlook, to these communities and to this nation of Ethiopia, which is becoming more of a backlash. So we are seeing Abiy Ahmed is very unstable in his domestic policies. So I believe the only way he can be able to engage with neighbors, with Uhuru Kenyatta, with the United Nations Security Council members, is by trying to open up Ethiopia, first of all, politically, Miriam. There are a lot of issues in concern. There are a lot of political prisoners. You remember the oppositional leader of Ethiopia is now behind bars. They are serving there. They are on hunger strike as far as this is concerned. And now Prime Minister Abiy is facing a more of a legitimacy test when you are fighting a war against your own people, and at the same time, you subjugated negatively the rights you granted to people on releasing of these, political prisoners. So I believe all these needs not a global approach. Let it start with a regional engagement. Let Kenya engage with Ethiopia first. Let us see the role IGAD can play in this. The same way IGAD played a de-escalation role between Kenya and Somalia is the same way IGAD can do in this. And we can see where we can go forward in this, Miriam, because also to put the matter into perspective, you remember Ethiopia recent Grand Reconnaissance Dam construction project, which began in 2012, has now established a new war and conflict with its neighbors, that is Sudan and Nile, and that is Egypt, on the legitimacy of Ethiopia deciding to construct the dam, and with fears of reduction in water and cost of flood by Egypt and Sudan have been already being discussed, and the matter is being investigated further. So you see, in this sense, Ethiopia is engaging more aggressively with its neighbors, with continental neighbors, Miriam, and forgetting the internal issues. So I believe before Abiy Ahmed even focuses on bringing a lot of reconciliation and continental, regional, AU and UN into this, I think IGAD should be taking a key precedence. And I believe the only way we can de-escalate this, Abiy Ahmed should really work close and open up to his neighbor, that is Uhuru Kenyatta, because this is a person who has been given a very strategic position. You remember he was given the chairperson of United Nations Security, AU, African Union Security Council. He is the current incoming chairperson for East African Community, Miriam. So a lot has to be said, and even when Joe Biden called him to brief him on issues of counterterrorism, intelligence, and security partnership in Horn of Africa, Miriam, I believe Abiy should not be the one to struggle a lot in establishing ties on how issues of Tigray region can be resolved, Miriam.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Yes, the peace and the security council there. Kenya is the chairperson of that, as well as Kenya is a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. And last year, after Kenya was elected, remember, after Djibouti fiercely fought, AU's decision endorsement of Kenya after the vote of the members there, about 3 times Kenya emerged the win, and Djibouti said no. We are taking this to the UN and we'll have people vote there. So the first round, Kenya led but did not meet the threshold that is required. And in the second round, Kenya won against Djibouti there. And President Uhuru Kenyatta termed the win a demonstration of the country's growing profile and influence in the community of nations as a steadfast and dependable development partner. Now, there was a meeting that happened, a virtual meeting that happened last week. United Nations Security Council opened a debate hosted by United Kingdom on the nexus between climate and security. And in that, President Uhuru Kenyatta reiterated Kenya's strong commitment to advancing Africa's agenda at the United Security Council, especially on matters of climate change and security on the continent. Can we talk about security on the continent, and what do you think are just some of the most pressing security concerns that President Uhuru Kenyatta should quickly present to the United Nations Security Council?
Thank you, Miriam. I think one of the most pressing security issues and concern in African continent is the preceding events of what is happening in Nigeria, Miriam. I think we are seeing the coming back of resurgence. We are seeing the implication of the presence of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and ISIL in the region. That is the Maghreb side of Senegal, Miriam. The side of, Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Miriam. I think Kenya should be playing a key role in this, Miriam, as far as climate and, security climate is concerned. Nigerian issue is really becoming more of a concern. We saw the other day the increased cases of kidnapping. Apart from that, Miriam, also we are seeing the aspect of another fear of clashes coming up in Democratic Republic of Congo and the Central African Republic. Miriam, you remember Central African Republic have been having a lot of religious civil wars, whereby the Christians, the Catholic Christians and the Muslims in the region have really been at conflict. So Democratic Republic of Congo also comes into the sense, Miriam, as far as this is concerned. Mm-hmm. And also one of the issues to be really looked at from all the angles of diplomacy and, humanitarian engagement is the Cameroonian issue, the Anglophone and the Francophone, secession agenda which is going on in that country, whereby President Paul Biya has failed to listen to on the way the issues of French-speaking and the English-speaking communities can be resolved in achieving a communal engagement in that state. I know it's more of internal, mm-hmm. but an advice can be leveraged on how, before it escalates to be more of a bigger conflict, it can be tamed, Miriam. And finally, I believe on what's happening in Libya. Libya is really in a big crisis as far as this is concerned. The other day we saw United Nations backed forces now intervening in Libya under the leadership of Turkey, Miriam, to protect the government of national accord. And now we are seeing also the transitional army led by Khalifa Haftar, warlord Khalifa Haftar, is really getting a lot of support from United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Miriam. Mm-hmm. We are seeing more of a geopolitical, muscle flexing here. So it's up to President Uhuru Kenyatta and Kenya in particular to see on how mm-hmm. issues of Libya can be consulted and advised, because as far as that country is concerned, elections were to be held, but now election is in limbo, Miriam. Mm-hmm. And finally, we are seeing the Somalian question, Miriam. The other day, Somalia is really causing a lot of attention on the global scale. It is not more of what it used to be under the leadership of Siad Barre, but it might be the reincarnation of more conflict in the region, Miriam. We are seeing a lot of, not leave alone even the refusal of President Farmajo to leave power, mm-hmm. but we are seeing Somalia's harsh relations toward the AMISOM troop in Somalia. And you remember very well, AMISOM troop have really played a very key role, and a strategic role in stabilizing Ethiopia. So President Uhuru Kenyatta, with the advice from United Nations Security Council can wage the way forward on how proper funding and more strengthening of the AMISOM flagship should be put into place so that Somalia will not go to the place it left, Miriam.
Mm-hmm.
Somalia will not go back to the war-torn nature it has been for the past 20 years. And I think putting Somalia on focus, giving it the attention they need, humanitarian attention, the infrastructure attention will really go a long way in stabilizing that great country, Miriam. And finally, I think what we are seeing, it's not more of a conflict, but it is strengthening and reiterating what has been happening in the African continent, where AU member states are now in the process of ratifying the African Free Trade Agreement, the AfTA Treaty, on how now that treaty even can be strengthened with global leaders, Miriam. We have World Trade Organization under the auspices of United Nations and other organizations, the Bretton Woods. So I feel Kenya being United Nations Security Council member, it might not be conflict based or security issue, but it can also take the leverage and advantage of how we can advance on that, Miriam, because all of it revolves around uniting the African continent as a whole.
Very well, and it's quite interesting. Yeah, thank you so much for reminding me of Libya. There has been several talks, and the one that seems to be holding, the one that was started by German's Chancellor Angela Merkel there, then it was brought back to Morocco, where even the GNU was first formed there, and it has been tumultuous. And I remember when Egypt's President Fattah al-Sisi was the chairperson of AU before Cyril Ramaphosa came in. He tried to lead some talks to see if at all a lasting peace could be found or facilitated there in Libya. But what is interesting, you've mentioned UAE, who are backing the Khalifa Haftar. Egypt is also actively backing Haftar. France, one of the United Nations permanent members there, is also said to be backing France, to be backing Khalifa Haftar. So you wonder, they sit at the United Nations Security Council, they make this decision, and then one of the members, a permanent member in the United Nations Security Council, goes against the resolutions that have been made in the United Nations Security Council and does support, Khalifa Haftar. I don't know how this scenario is likely to play out and how Kenya perhaps should handle this. I know non-permanent members don't really have much say, but I think they can help in influencing some of these things.
Yeah, thank you, Miriam. I think for the Libyan question, it's as you've already put it, it's a bit complex. It involves a lot of the permanent members. We see the influence of some Arabic nations under the auspices of Gulf states in the name of UAE, Saudi Arabia also, Miriam, and Qatar. I know it's only China, Germany, United Kingdom, United States of America, and Russia who can have a bit of an influence here. But what Africa can do, what Kenya can do, is that there should be some form of attention, reminding this council that what is happening there. People are thinking since Muammar Gaddafi left, things have been good, things are stabilizing, but we are now seeing of what have really happened in Iraq, now being translated on what is happening in Libya. Remember in Iraq, Miriam, there was a lot of regional dominance in the country when the country went into conflict oblivion. Iran, they were trying to use Taliban, they were trying to use some sort of Hezbollah to have the presence in the region. Saudi Arabia, they were using their sectarian approach also in this. So Iraq became a battleground for proxies and states to determine their military levels and strength. The same way of what is happening currently in Yemen, Miriam. Saudi Arabia has refused to order a pattern of conflict resolution and reconciliation in that state. And they are now fighting, with Houthi rebels in the northern part of the Yemen, Miriam, and the Sana'a region. And now we are seeing the same being reflected and being, brought overboard to Libya. We are seeing more of Qatar, UAE, Russia fighting the United Nations-backed group of Turkey in this sense, Miriam. And we see country divided in this. So I will see President Uhuru Kenyatta and Kenya in particular to give more of attention, priorities and advice. If there can be any emergency security calling they can do, they should be resolving that one. But apart from that, I know Northern Africa is a bit complex. I know Western Africa, due to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, is a bit complex. But what Uhuru Kenyatta should do, and he must resolve, this is not, not going to be hard for him because it's close to him, is the two agenda of the Ethiopian crisis integral region and the Somalian agenda, Miriam. So
and
on
Sudan,
how he can handle this, it depends with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Farmajo. But what I see is that instead of going into the further escalation of what is happening in Northern Africa and West Africa, he can tame and put Horn of Africa in a more stable condition if indeed he is going to resolve the Ethiopian question and the Somalian agenda, Miriam.
All right. And it's interesting you would say that because when Kenya was assuming that position at the United Nations, a draft agenda proposed by Nairobi says the continent must address underlying crises, especially in the Horn of Africa, climate change, sustainable peacekeeping operations, and strengthening transitions in countries like Sudan. I don't know why they did not mention South Sudan, but also Kenya proposed that the continental body strengthens a common stand by all its three members, that is Tunisia, Niger, and Kenya. They are known as the A3, the United Nations Security Council non-permanent members from Africa. We are three: Kenya, Tunisia, and Niger. And Kenya is hoping, from what we're learning, that perhaps when it comes to matters that are really important in this continent, the three countries from Africa will be voting in one voice, will be speaking in one voice, will perhaps assume a common ground when it comes to things affecting the continent. But when you look at the larger geopolitical scenario, the way a lot of countries are usually influenced by different factors, say Tunisia might be influenced by the Arab League or something, Niger by the Francophone interest and something like that, and Kenya is down here. So how do you see this playing out? Are we likely to see a strong cooperation between these three African countries at the United Nations Security Council non-permanent membership?
I think, Miriam, for Niger and Tunisian issue, and Kenya, they might not agree on everything. I know there is the divisive issue of the Maghreb, the Western Sahara question with Morocco, which I know Tunisia absolutely is going to support Morocco in this. We have we have several conflicting issues, but there are some issues of which these three countries can agree upon. And this is very eminent and well outlined issues, Miriam. What they can agree upon is the war on terror. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and ISIL and Boko Haram have really penetrated into the Western African countries, and I believe even to some extent, they can be a very eminent threat to Tunisia. So on how they can counter terrorism and issues of extremism, violent extremism in the region, it's something which these three states can agree upon. The second agenda they can agree upon is the humanitarian crisis in the Mediterranean, Miriam, and the human trafficking agenda in this region. You remember, people are really drowning in Mediterranean Sea, trying to cross the turbulent sea, looking for better pasture and better working condition across the Europe in areas of, via Strait of Gibraltar and Spain and Italy. So I believe what these three countries can agree upon is these issues of human trafficking and, humanitarian crisis, refugee crisis in the continent. Another third agenda they can really agree upon, Miriam, is on how they are going to restore the aspects of, the Tigray issue, that is northern part of Africa, and that is Ethiopia. They can really agree upon on that. Because if not checked, Ethiopian crisis is going to trigger the aspect of Sudan going into conflict also. You remember South Sudan, as I've forgotten to mention earlier, is also a bit unstable despite the peace agreement between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. And finally, Miriam, what these three countries can agree upon, and they can put better ways to, to advance African agenda on in the United Nations Security Council, is the aspect of Africa being granted the independence to deal with its own issues, Miriam. We have never been trusted. Africa, all the time we are being confronted with, intervention measures. Africa really advised, advised against any intervention in Libya. United Nations went ahead. Africa were never consulted on the agenda of, the Cameroon, which is now propping up after it has went a bit underground. I think now what I believe is that African problems should be countered by African solution. And I'm not yet, I hope not to see any any European or, these permanent member states taking a very escalatory measure of engaging in more conflict with African states. Some are stabilizing, like Somalian question, Miriam. I know these three countries are more driven also by identity issues, neocolonialism issues. When you see Kenya, you see more of United Kingdom, you see more of Commonwealth. When you see Niger, you see more of French here. When you see Tunisia, this Arab League, Miriam, it's all about oil dominance. It's all about, that identity dominance. But I think the three strategic agenda that I've posed to you is what they can agree and work upon.
So what you're saying is we're likely to see a cooperation between these three African countries at the United Nations Security Council, Tunisia,
Definitely.
Niger, and Kenya. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That is Musa Abdi Haji, all the way from the Isiolo County. Musa, thank you so much for your company this afternoon. All right, and yes, we were looking at Kenya's position in the United Nations Security Council, which it assumed earlier in the year, and the AU. Right now, Kenya is chairing the Peace and Security Council, and this is standing decision-making organ of the African Union for the prevention, management, and resolution of conflicts there in the African Union. And if you know what has been happening in this continent, we do have a lot of conflicts that needs to be resolved, and also Kenya, their promise that it will be a strong voice when it comes to Africa representation at the United Nations Security Council. And it's hoping the rest of the two African countries that also are in the United Nations Security Council will cooperate so that they're able to be a strong voice for the continent. Even as we speak right now, Kenya is the chairperson, President Uhuru Kenyatta, of the East African community. So we have a lot. President Uhuru Kenyatta has a lot of responsibility, and to ensure that some of these things are addressed effectively. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Miriam Mugutu. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.